Welcome to the Hornet Spotlight for the month of January. The school year is flying by. We're well into the second semester now, and we're actually well into January, so we're a little bit late getting our Alumni of the Month for this month in here. He got caught in some bad weather. He lives in Indiana, but it's still, as you all know, January's not been real kind to Indiana weather-wise, but we're very happy to have from the class of 1967, right, Steve? Mm-hmm. Class of 1967, Mr. Steve Akers from Crawfordsville, Indiana. Graduate, I believe he is in the growing number of alums who have had relatives in here. I believe we found your brother's picture out there on the board, yeah. So he is our second Akers student to be in here, and congratulations and thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming. You were due here a couple weeks ago, and that weather kind of got contrary with us, and then you got to get away from the weather for a while and had a good time, right?
Yes, very much so.
Steve, we missed out on the snow day, and he took a little vacation in Hawaii, but we got him back to the beautiful Indiana weather, and we're glad to have him with us today. Steve graduated in '67.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about '67. The building, if you weren't one of the first classes in here, you may have been the first class in here.
Our class had the first full school year, because we moved here from the old school on Buffalo Avenue, I guess it was the address. We moved here in the spring of '66. And so we finished, I think it was like from spring vacation of '66 on to the end of the year, we finished here in this building. So our class of '67 then, starting in the fall, we were able to go the first full year here at the new school back then anyway.
Do you recall how many members were in the class of '67?
I believe it was somewhere like 125.
125. Which,
if I may ask, what's an average class size now?
We're about 220 now.
Okay, good.
220. We're growing a little bit. At that time, obviously, a lot of excitement with a new school.
Yes.
Probably a little bit of anxiety from leaving your comfort zone, moving into a new
facility.
No,
we were all ready to go.
Ready to go?
I mean, having lived the double school life,
right.
I can't remember. Junior high was in the morning, we were in the afternoon, or maybe it was vice versa, but sharing the building with other students, it was difficult. So we were ready to come
ready
here.
For the new digs.
Yes. Oh, yes.
What else was going on about that time? Besides the new school, I'm sure that was a dominating source of conversation, but what was happening in town and what kinds of things were going on for you personally at that time?
Oh, gosh. Things going on in town, I don't remember. My gosh, 50 some years ago, I really don't recall anything of significance. It was the routine stuff. I mean, we had I think it was like some kind of a function in the fall for the community down Main Street,
fall
a parade
festival.
down. Yes, fall
Still
festival.
Goes
thank
on.
you.
Still goes on.
Still doing that. From a school standpoint, we had just come off of a fabulous basketball season for the class of '66, doing well in the sectional and on into the regional. Didn't go beyond the regional, but I don't think we were expected to even get to the regional, so that was exciting. I remember that. I can remember teachers, classes, but things of significance from Beech Grove itself, nah, I don't. I mean, Main Street was Main Street, 13th Avenue was 13th Avenue, Emerson Avenue was growing. I mean, that was something of significance.
It wasn't the fast food haven it is today, was it?
Oh my gosh, no. I was looking at my old 1967 yearbook last night just to reflect on the old days, and in there's a photograph of it was the first athletic bus that we had that had overturned. And I still remember that fall of '66, in football season, we headed out to the Jamboree. I don't know, is there still a Jamboree now? Or?
No, we have
Okay.
scrimmages now.
Okay, well, it was something like that. Anyway, we were headed to Speedway, and you know, we're all pumped up, excited, and we get onto this bus. It was an old bus, but it was the first athletic bus for us, so we're excited about that. And the driver for that bus wasn't quite familiar with how it operated, so we pull out of here on what was Pacific Avenue at the time and turn left on Emerson to get to the interstate, which was brand new then. And when he turned left, he was fumbling around with the gear shift and didn't realize that back then Emerson Avenue was just 2 lanes wide. It was a country road. So he didn't realize where he was headed, and unfortunately he veered off to the edge of the road, and the bus literally overturned on its side. So that was something, obviously, that was memorable. But you know, hey, we had a bus full of football players already in pads. Didn't matter, you know. I mean, it was an exciting thing for us, but I'm sure not for the bus driver.
Probably
But
not.
anyway.
You mentioned classes and teachers. Talk to us a little bit about the classes and the teachers that really helped you as you look back. I don't think sometimes as a student you understand how much helping they're doing and what an influence their work is, but as you have a chance to look back, tell us a little bit about some of the teachers and classes that you think really benefited you while you were
Yeah,
here.
probably one of the more influential teachers I had was a fellow by the name of Dave Topping. He was our new football coach back then, and we had just moved here. We had not a very good practice field. We gave up going to the 13th Street Main Street football field for practices. That's still where we played our games, but we practiced here out in the front lawn of a newly built building, which meant there was no grass out there. But anyway, he had to tolerate that condition for us players. But we really enjoyed his discipline. He got a lot out of us, got a lot out of me anyway. And the other connection there with Mr. Topping was that he was my drafting teacher. I already had an interest in going into architecture, and so I was taking a mechanical drafting class with him, which at that time was an elective. And so being coached on the football field, being taught mechanical drafting by him, we had a lot of conversations together. And I don't know whatever became of Mr. Topping. After I graduated, I came back to see him the following year. We had a nice lengthy conversation about my time here at Beech Grove and what was appearing to be a success to move on to college and especially into architecture, and I really enjoyed the encouragement he gave me. Other teachers at that time, right here, were in what used to be the band room. Ora Pemberton was our band teacher at the time, fairly new to the school, but I can still appreciate his discipline and encouragement and willing to work one-on-one with the individual band members, and so that was very enjoyable. Gosh, I had probably another half dozen teachers that all were positive influences on me. Mr. Benham was a math teacher at that time. I mean, I'm not sure he's still around. At that time, I thought he was about 70 years old, but still, he was very enjoyable to be with. Now I'm getting to the point where, okay, who else was there back then? I'm not remembering other names, but those fellows right there were very good influences on me.
And you mentioned your interest in architecture.
Yes.
Is that where you headed once you left here to pursue that?
Yes. Oh, yes. This came about. My interest in architecture came about in the 8th grade when I think maybe this is still being done, where students had to pick some kind of an occupation to write about, to do research about. And I was interested in hammers and saws and things like that back then, and so I started reading about building construction and started to write about building construction, but adjacent to that study was architecture. And that really intrigued me, to be able to have control over the built environment. Not only just building things, but actually figuring out what's going to be built and where it's going to go, how it goes together, and so forth. So my paper in the 8th grade ended up being about architecture. So I was already focused towards a career in architecture back as early as the 8th grade.
And we have that, we call that school to career, work-based learning, a lot of different names.
Oh, I'm sure.
Same product.
Yeah, I'm sure it has.
And what school did you pursue your architectural?
I went to the University of Cincinnati, graduated from the University of Cincinnati. I've always had an affinity with the city of Cincinnati. I grew up being a Cincinnati Reds fan. That probably came from my father, maybe my brother. Just always enjoyed watching the Reds when I could, going to Crosley Field when I could. And so when it came time to, okay, Steve, if you're interested in architecture, where can you get your education? Well, looking around and talking to people, I heard where Ball State was starting an architecture program, but I didn't want to be a guinea pig. Didn't really want to test it out. And the only other school of architecture in Indiana, still to this day, is Notre Dame. That seemed to be a bit salty for our family, so it just so happened that the next nearest school of architecture was University of Cincinnati, and I thought, hey, no question, that's where I'm going to go. And so indeed, that's where I started in the fall of 1967. Cincinnati is a 6-year program in architecture. I believe it still is. And it's 6 years because it's a work-study program. You go the first 2 years roughly just normal academics, but then after that second year, then you pick which quarters of the year. They were on a quarter system. You pick either summer, winter, or spring, fall to attend school. And then the other 2 quarters, you were out in the workplace. And that was something else that drew me to the University of Cincinnati. And I'm always, ever since graduating, have been an advocate for that type of a program, for students to get their feet wet in the office and not just with knowledge of the philosophies of architecture offered by a school of architecture. That was an experience that I'm always advocating to those kids who are interested in architecture. I said, and it's not just University of Cincinnati, but there's several other schools that offer work study. It takes longer, but by all means, it's certainly worth it. And not only that, but you're earning money to help pay for the education while you're at it. So. But anyway, that's where I went. That's what I enjoyed, and I still enjoy supporting that school.
And nothing like hands-on.
Oh,
Like
absolutely. Absolutely.
It is definitely the way to go. You graduated from UC.
Yes.
And you learned to hate Xavier in the meantime, right?
Oh, yeah.
We have a math teacher who might disagree with you. But when you left Cincinnati, where'd you head?
Well, as a part of the work-study program, my mother, who's passed away here now a couple of years ago, she was very instrumental in helping guide my beginning adult future. While I was at the University of Cincinnati those first couple of years, she looked for a job for me. She knew that I was going to be getting out into the workplace with the work study, and it was up to the students to find that job. I mean, the university would help somewhat, but it was up to the student to go find their own job in an architecture business. So God bless her, she found a construction company up next to where my father used to work on North Meridian. And she called that construction company asking for directions. She didn't know of any architecture companies. So she called them to find out, and they directed her to a company by the name of Fleck, Burkhardt, Shropshire. And that was an architectural firm up at around 46th and Keystone. She contacted them, and they said, sure, bring him in. We'll be glad to probably hire him, because they always had a need for younger people to come in and do the gopher work. And so I connected with the Fleck, Burkhardt, Shropshire office after my second year at UC. And I was with that office for the next 4 years. The full 4 years of the remaining part of my college education, I always would go to school, go to work at Flex, go to school, go to work at Flex. And there was growth during that time with that firm as I became more skilled at the world of architecture and being able to draft and understand how buildings can go together. And so that was a very enjoyable experience too.
And from there,
we'll
just keep going. We'll just keep going.
By the way, the Fleck, Burkhardt, Shropshire company, while I was there those 4 years, they changed names a few times, and I think the last name they had when I left them was Fleck, Burkhardt, Shropshire, Boots and Reed. Kind of like a law firm of sorts, I suppose. But as I was approaching graduation, I felt like that even though I enjoyed being at that office, it was a big office, probably 40 to 50 people there. And even though I was growing in my knowledge, I was still somewhat cubbyholed, doing a lot of mundane things. I enjoyed the people. I just didn't enjoy what I felt like was ahead of me. I felt like I was still going to be stuck down in that lower echelon for a while. So I started my senior year looking for somewhere else other than Flex office to continue my vocation. And my brother was a graduate of Wabash College in Crawfordsville. I'm actually getting ahead of myself here. When looking for a job after graduation, I looked in the want ads of the Indianapolis Star back when they had want ads in the paper.
Yourself,
yeah. And lo and behold, there was an ad there for a company by the name of Akers and Associates Architects in Crawfordsville. I just thought, and they were looking for a graduate architect. I thought, man, this is cool. I've got to check them out. Lo and behold, and here comes the mother thing again. My mother at that time was a bank teller down at 13th and Main at Merchants Bank. And she came home one day and said, Steve, there's a lady that I work with who has a brother in Crawfordsville that's an architect, and he's looking for a graduate architect. And I just thought, oh my gosh, too much of a coincidence. So I had to check it out. I went to Crawfordsville, went to an interview with Charles Akers, and we got a kick out of going back through the family tree to see if we connected somewhere, and no, we really didn't. But nevertheless, it was a small office. It was just him and two other draftsmen, and that was it. And he saw me coming in, and with the knowledge, the experience I had with the Fleck, Burkhardt, Shropshire office, he put me right under him to develop buildings as he would design them. So, you know, he would design a building and say, here, put it together, figure out how the walls are going to go up and what's going to support it structurally, and make sure you integrate all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing in with it. And so immediately I got my feet wet in understanding how buildings really go together, and working with engineers and working with contractors and so forth. So that was, thank you, Mother, again for helping me out. So yes, I joined the Akers and Associates firm. My first day there was September 17th, 1973, which was just 3 months after I had graduated from University of Cincinnati. Been there ever since. So that firm, Akers and Associates, owned by Charles Akers, was in existence until his retirement in 2001. And at that time, by that time, the company had grown. We had probably 10 people in the office then, and that was made up of some other up-and-coming architecture type people, and we also had a construction department by then. So we had a construction guy in there. Chuck ended up selling that company to 4 of us who had been with him for several years. And the 4 of us, upon gaining ownership of this architectural firm in 2001, had to think about, okay, it's ours now. Are we going to leave it as Akers and Associates, or are we going to take this opportunity to change the name to something else? And so that was kicked around for a while, and finally what resulted was the common sense that, you know what, we have been Akers and Associates for a number of years. It's been successful. Why remove that name from the marketplace? And not only that, you've already got another Akers on board too, who I was at the time the senior member of the company. So we left it as Akers and Associates Architects. The construction side of it changed into Akers Construction Services, and then the two together, we marketed ourselves as just simply Akers Companies. So at least we kept the name Akers and Associates for the marketplace that we were in, which ever since I joined them in 1973 and until the very end of it, we were involved in a lot of church work throughout the Midwest. And so we had a name already established in the church marketplace, and so we just kept it as Akers and Associates and Akers Construction Services combined together to make Akers Companies. But then we also threw out another name, Akers Church Building Services, when we would meet with churches to let them know that we are indeed a conglomerate of architecture and construction.
Sounds like it's very multifaceted at this point.
As far as
just what all you're willing to take on.
Yes, I would say through the years, generally our percentage of church work was about 70 to 80%. The remaining percentage was with essentially anything we could make a buck on, and primarily anything that went on in the Crawfordsville area we went after, and were very successful at doing a lot of the architecture around the community of Montgomery County and city of Crawfordsville.
So you literally left your mark there.
Well, I don't know that the mark was left there. It's still being left there. I mean, I'm still there. I'm still producing.
It will have been left there when you're gone.
Yes, yes.
Your work will stand the test of time.
Yes, it will. I certainly hope so. Anyway.
You mentioned your family a couple times. Let's elaborate on that just a little bit.
Sure.
You talked about your brother a little bit and mom, of course, but go ahead and talk about your family a little bit and what it's like raising a family in Crawfordsville.
Okay. My immediate family, mother and father, Jim and Helen Akers. My brother, who's 3 years older than me, is Mike Akers. My sister, 3 years younger than me, is Kathy Akers, now Kathy Nagel. My brother lives out in Arizona now. My sister lives over in the Dayton, Ohio area. Both have had successful careers. My brother in the, I'll call it biopharmaceutic field. My sister with, she's been with a law firm. She's not an attorney, but she runs a law office though over there in the Dayton area. So she's had a good career there with law. Both have had families with successful children. And as far as my wife and I found my love, and here I go again. I found my love through my mother. My wife, Marty, we've been married now going on 44 years, I'm sorry. It'll be 44 years in April. Marty was a bank teller with my mother, serving there during a summer one year, and she's from the Whiteland area. My mother called me up one day, said, "Steve, there's another teller here who's doing some summertime work. She's from Whiteland. I think you might want to meet her." So sure enough, we got together, and here we are almost 44 years later, still married. So we have a son, Zachary. Zach works for Subaru in Lafayette. He's married with 2 children, so we have 2 grandchildren. Faith and Lily, ages 9 and 7. And I should also say too that we had another son, Joshua, who unfortunately lost his life in a 3-wheeler accident back in 1998 in Mexico while he was on a spring vacation trip with a friend of his, family friend of his. And so unfortunately he's not with us, but nevertheless we've certainly enjoyed our time with Zach and his family. And so we feel like that, you know, there's so many dysfunctional families these days, and we feel so fortunate, both my wife and I, that her family, my family, the family tree as it's growing, is still stable and perpetuating.
And it is rare. Unfortunately, it's becoming more rare all the time. We see that here all the time as well.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at Steve's display in our case, which we'll try to get up pretty quickly here, you'll see that he's received a lot of local awards for his contributions to the Crawfordsville and Montgomery County community. Obviously been a good citizen. Learned that well here in Beech Grove, right?
You bet.
And
you bet.
I would imagine there's a little bit of similarity between the way Beech Grove was when you were here and the way Crawfordsville is.
Well, and
that
entered into my decision to go to Crawfordsville, about the same size city. It's not a suburb of Indianapolis, but still reasonably close to Indianapolis. So yes, growing up in my adult life in the Crawfordsville area was very much like growing up in my junior life here in Beech Grove.
Do they have a Main Street in Crawfordsville?
Yes. Yes, and my office is on Main Street.
On Main Street, that sounds good.
Well,
Steve, it has been a pleasure talking with you. And again, congratulations
thank you very
for being
much.
selected by our Renaissance Committee as our
thank you.
January first one of 2018.
Great.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. Again, when you see everything in Steve's display, you'll see a lot of things that we have not discussed here today. I think he's probably a little bit modest, but we're very, very proud to have him as an addition to the Alumni Hall of Fame. And we'll be back again next month, which isn't too far off now, with a February alum. And we're looking forward to that in the near future. So again, thank you for watching. And again, congratulations to Steve Akers from the class of '67 for his selection into the Beech Grove Alumni Hall of Fame.